Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, relatives lose everything because they were too stupid to keep their mouths shut. Company recruits me for senior position, brings me to their HQ, project gets cancelled while I'm interviewing and I'm supposed to pay for the trip? I don't think so. My ex-advisor plagiarized my work, so I exposed her, and that cost her job. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Relatives lose everything because they were too stupid to keep their mouths shut. A bit of a context here. I work as a lawyer for an excellent and famous law firm here in northern Italy. My family went through some low times. In the last 9 years, we had to face a brutal divorce with my dad having depleted every single cent he could. One of my aunts was brutally murdered because of a €150 cautionary deposit. My granddad was diagnosed with cancer, and some other funny stuff in the middle. Because of that, our bonds became stronger and stronger. Must say that with my family, I mean my mother, her parents, and my 2 aunts. This year, COVID-19 managed to take away both my aunts. I love them to the moon and back, but one of them was married to a complete douchebag. He always considered himself to be better and smarter than anyone else. And so were his relatives. My aunt and her husband, I straight up refused to call him uncle, lived in a huge house, and so did his brother with her wife and son. He died around 7-8 years ago and left almost everything he could just to his brother and his family, completely ignoring my family because OP's granddad is already rich. Why should I leave anything to his daughter and grandson, basically? This year, my aunt was won by COVID. I was grieving, since I really loved her and cared about her, and I already lost another aunt prior. When the notary called us to read the will, both me and my mother came out completely astonished. She left us just a few things, even though she always said she would have left us basically everything. I don't need the money involved that much, as I already inherited from my other aunt, and my job pays me really well, but my mom always had to struggle, financially speaking. It would have been a huge help, since she doesn't want anything from me. I tried to give her some money in the past, but she always sent them back, being stubborn as she can be. As we walked out, I pulled my cousin by my side to ask him just one thing. Hey, cousin, listen. I know it's a dumb question. But when I last saw her, I brought my aunt a little ceramic bell, shaped as a lady. She holds it to her chest all the time. I'd like to have it back, it would be a memory of her. He, smiling at me as I was the most stupid people on earth, yeah, sure, whatever. IDK what I could do with that stupid bell, take it. But don't expect us to give you anything more, we had to sweat bullets for this will to work. I'm sorry, what you mean? He realized he screwed up, so he just left. My mom went back home, I headed back to my office to take a closer look on my aunt's will. It was bulletproof and the handwriting was, without any doubt, my aunt's. So, what the hell did he mean? It took me several weeks to finally get the clue. As previously mentioned by my husband. It was just this small phrase. My aunt's husband died 7 years before, how the hell could he mention anything? Since zombies are still nowhere to be seen, and I don't know of any deceased person talking from his grave, I started to scan the whole will once again. Things I never noticed became as clear as the sun. 1. There were missing pages. My aunt numbered them, but the 2nd and 4th pages were missing, with sentences left hanging there. 2. Some of the corrections were legit, but looking closely, there were a few of them where the uncertain hand of a 81-year-old lady suddenly became stronger and more precise. 3. My aunt's husband was mentioned every time my aunt was talking about money and valuables. He did say something about the savings, but apparently his ties that were to be given to charity didn't need his approval. Strange, huh? When I talked to my mom and her parents about this, my granddad, who is 74 and still has more strength and lucidity than your average 40-year-old dude, mentioned my aunt's husband will. We don't know what he said, his family never let us even take a look at it, and it wasn't worth it to sue them. I went back to the notary the next day, asking to see the will. Since I was a relative, he let me but asked what was going on. I simply said you'll know soon enough. When I read it, I started laughing so hard that even the secretary came to see what the fuck was going on. I rushed back to my office and started to write everything down. Shit was about to hit the fan, but not for my family. After a few days, me, my mom, her parents, and my aunt's relatives met once again in front of the notary. I already told him what was happening. I could see him trying not to look disgusted as my aunt's husband's beloved ones walked in. Notary, we are all here. Apparently, OP has some things to discuss with us concerning inheritances. You could hear a pin drop a mile away. I stood up and opened my bag. My family was smiling, my relatives were staring daggers from their eyes. Me, as we all know, Auntie left everything to you. Nothing is wrong here, as she didn't have any direct relationship with anyone in this room. What is wrong is the reason behind it. I handed a copy of the will to everyone, with some parts being highlighted. Me, as you can see, pages are missing. Some corrections are different, to say the least. But most importantly, my uncle is cited quite often. This led me to his will. At this point, my relatives turned whiter than snow. My cousin tried to stop me, telling me I couldn't possibly use my uncle's will, as more than 5 years passed. The notary told him that I totally could, as the allowance to contest a will is 10 years. He kept silent. Me, he left to my aunt everything he had if she would have left it to you as she died. You see, in our state it's not legal to make such a kind of contract. So, I want to let you know that you just lost all your rights on my uncle's will, and you are all to be sued for false declaration in public deed and attempted fraud. They started screeching and screaming, calling me names and wishing me an obviously pleasant and late death. All because one of them wasn't clever enough to shut his mouth. Now they lost everything they had, since their farm, their money, their house and their cars were all my uncle's. They have been forced to leave the house they were living in, all their bank accounts have been blocked, and even their farm had to be closed since it was also my uncle's previous activity. Since the correction they made were actually very precise and some items, jewelry, ingots, cash, are now mysteriously missing, they even have to pay for an equal value. They had a little empire, but managed to lose everything over greed and stupidity. Ladies and gentlemen, please, listen to me. If you want to screw with someone, at least have the courtesy of not doing it with a lawyer. Company recruits me for senior position, brings me to their HQ, project gets cancelled while I'm interviewing and I'm supposed to pay for the trip? I don't think so. During the dot-com boom in the late 90s I became somewhat well known for my expertise with a now somewhat obsolete networking technology. I ended up getting heavily recruited by a big telecom firm in Denver to run the technical side of a huge networking project they had underway. After multiple phone interviews, I was invited out for the big in-person sit-down, a 2-day affair where I met with the big dogs, other techies, HR, etc. It was a pretty killer opportunity. Took the trip. First day of meetings went great, I felt it was a great match, etc. I did sense there was some tension between two groups over network architecture. Turned out that was one of the reasons they were bringing in someone more senior who could finalize the approach and get the project moving. That was fine, all part of the job, whatever. Got wined and dined after the first day, was definitely feeling like the job was a match, and that I'd be moving to Denver. Went in the second day, and after another round of interviews the division head takes me to lunch. That's when it all blew up. While we were at lunch the firm's senior management canned the entire project and fired every person associated with it. Apparently there was a huge internal political war going on, this project was ground zero for the big battle, and this division just lost. We get back from lunch and the manager escorts me to HR where we're going to sit down and go over their offer. Instead he's told what's going on and that he's out of a job along with everyone else on the project. At this point I was told to leave. No apologies, it was just shitty luck for me. WTF? Okay then, I'm gone. I get back to the hotel, and there's a voicemail for me asking me to call the HR people. I'm pissed but I call. They tell me they've had to cancel my return ticket, and that I'd need to pay for the hotel myself for now, but that if I would submit an expense report they might be able to get me a check. There's a second voicemail from the front desk asking me to provide a credit card for the stay. And then I get a call on my cell phone from the car rental company which I didn't answer. Turns out they also wanted my credit card. Fuck that. I called the airline and they said my reservation had indeed been cancelled. But they also acknowledged that the reservation was paid for using a fully refundable ticket which I was holding, and which back in the 90s was essentially as good as cash. Said they wouldn't know for certain if I could board until I showed up at the counter with the physical ticket. Great. Just fucking great. I'm on the hook for several thousand in airfare, nice hotel and rental car after taking several days of vacation from my job for this interview? I don't think so. Here's the revenge. I packed my bags and loaded up the rental car. Left the keys in hotel room door. Drove the rental car back to Dallas, stayed overnight in Amarillo. Dropped the rental at the Hertz lot at DFW Airport, took their shuttle to the terminal I'd left my car at and drove home. Over the next few months I got several nasty phone calls from their HR and accounting departments demanding I pay them back for the trip, including paying for the $700 drop-off fee for the car. Never answered them, of course, just let them go to voicemail. Eventually got a demand letter from their legal department, paid an attorney a nominal fee to send them a demand for compensation/threaten a lawsuit letter. Never heard from the firm again. Side note, the ticket itself was still valid. I ended up selling it to a friend at a big discount, and he was able to use it. My ex-advisor plagiarized my work, so I exposed her, and that cost her job. Just found out about this subreddit, and had to share this story. The initial reason for the revenge happened in 2013, but the revenge only happened in 2017. I'll keep everything vague as not to be recognized. For context, back in 2013 I was a graduate student pursuing my master's degree. That was my last year in the program. We had 24 months to finish all the work and the dissertation. My advisor was professor who was very well known and experienced on my field of work. Let's call her Janet, fake name. Janet and I had worked together with research since my college days, as I became part of an undergraduate research with her. At that point we had been working for about 4 years, and as any advisor-student relationship we more had our disagreements quite often. Janet was used to doing her experiments a certain, archaic way. I knew there were better uses of our grants money and always tried to push toward a more advanced method, especially correlating data collection and statistics. However, our relationship was always good. I knew her husband and had been to her house numerous times. She was a little set on her ways, but we managed to make good progress on our field. Anyhow, by the end of 2013, I presented my dissertation to the department and was approved with flying colors. My data still wasn't published in any paper, as I wanted to have more analysis in different areas to make a more robust and better paper. With that said, my dissertation was published, and by all reasons that is my work and my experiments. After I got my MS, I decided to pursue a PhD. While I was still going to work in the same field, I wanted to use different techniques and thus talked with Janet about going to pursue a PhD under a different professor in another university. She always encouraged me to do better and look for ways to diversify my views. I went ahead and contacted a professor outside my country in another university to pursue my PhD. I got approved and soon moved away. For the next 2 years I still kept contact with Janet, but on the third she stopped responding. Initially I thought she had changed her email or something, but didn't think much of it. Time flew by, and in 2017, while reading papers and writing my own, I came across a paper that was strangely similar with my research. Interested in it, I opened it up to read. For my shock, it was a paper by my ex-advisor. She was up as advisor and another guy, who from his curriculum is her current master's student. Reading the title I thought, hey, that's neat. She continued researching it. But boy, I was wrong. Reading the paper I got increasingly angry. That wasn't a new research. It was my research. My data was all in that paper, even my graphs and tables. Initially I thought, oh well, she's also an author, and if she is citing it, there shouldn't be a problem. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. My name was nowhere near that paper, as they claimed that research is original. Now, I was livid. I sent an email to Janet confronting her, which was never replied to. However, I am not a pushover and will never allow people to claim my own work as theirs. She made a mistake by using my data. I'm a researcher and I keep everything I ever worked on saved in external SSDs, encrypted and on my own possession. All cataloged with date entries, and even had my own dissertation to prove my work. In my country, research is financed by the governmental grants. I wrote an email to the dean of the grants institution, explaining all the situation, with proof of everything. I also sent an email to journal in which that was published contesting their paper and explaining everything. It didn't take longer than 15 days for me to get a follow-up. The institution responsible for the grant was furious. They cut all financial aid for her and her student, and made a formal requirement to the university requesting her immediate termination. The journal retracted the paper and is now suing her for plagiarism. Now, after all these years, I learned that she was indeed fired and haven't been able to work in the field ever since. I never met her again, and have no intention of ever doing so. Now, my work is published and I'm recognized by my contributions in the field. Maybe that was a petty thing to do. But I couldn't allow people to get away with claiming my work as theirs. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.